Okay. Hello and welcome to Nobody Does Anything, the NDA podcast, where we ask tough questions about cardistry in order to enrich our enjoyment of this awesome, weird art form. We're your hosts. I'm Spencer at sus.deck, and we have Christopher and Stan. Their Instagram handles will be below their pictures. Today, our topic is move ownership. So we're going to be talking about originality. Can you own a cardistry move? And kind of go through possible solutions or outcomes that this concept can take on cardistry itself. So what I want to start out with first is mentioning one thing is that for now, this episode, as you know if you're watching it, and then for the future, the episodes are only going to be on YouTube for now, because we're working on trying to get it on instead of just SoundCloud and YouTube, which we're gonna try and continue always to have it on YouTube, but we're trying to get it on like Spotify and Apple Music and things like this. So we're gonna sacrifice the SoundCloud part right now because to upload more we have to pay money, and we'd rather put it towards getting it on bigger platforms. Okay.
Yeah.
So
donations accepted.
Yeah, definitely hit us up. But yeah, so first off, CardistryCon. Out of us three, I'm the only one who went. That's not saying much considering it was 15 minutes from my house. But wow, yeah, it was. How I would describe my CardistryCon experience was amazing, enriching, exciting, fulfilling, and warm. I really couldn't believe. I actually, to be honest, I didn't know what to expect when I walked up to CardistryCon the first day. Because one, the only people I knew in person were the people that I picked up the day before from the airport who I stayed with, which was Caitlin Chen at Small Hand Things, Justine Co-Adventures, and Andrew Wynn and Nick Jansen. So we all stayed together, and we were together most of the time. So I knew them from the day before, thankfully. But I arrived separately for early access because I did get VIP, because I didn't have to get a flight there, which was nice. So I splurged a little bit on the VIP access. But yeah, it was like nerve-wracking first because I walk up and I don't know anybody. But by the end of the con, it's like you can't turn around without seeing a familiar face of somebody that you met. And that's saying a lot considering at this con there was almost 500 people there. So that is it's insane to me. Like, you would just be with your friends hanging out in a circle or whatever, and somebody would walk up, or you would walk up to some other circle and see what people are doing. Then you'd end up all introducing yourselves to each other, and now you have new friends. Everybody's like, oh, what's your Instagram handle? Follow you, follow me, follow you. And yeah, it was, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, there was not one negative moment other than it being physically exhausting doing like 9:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. that the con was going for, and then you're doing stuff at night till 4 in the morning and walking everywhere. So yeah, other than being exhausting, it was just it's going to be the highlight of my year for sure. There's nothing that's going to top that, and I cannot wait. Like, at first, before this CardistryCon, I was like, oh, I'm going to go because it's in my city. It's easy to access. And I was like, I probably will never go to one that's out of the United States or not even on the West Coast where I live. But now, after that experience, I'm already thinking of, I need to start planning expenses for Brussels. Like, I need to already have a plan for it because I don't want to miss it. I can't miss it. Like, that experience set the tone for CardistryCon, and it's something that you just can't miss once you go.
So, what were your favorite things at the con?
My favorite thing by far was meeting people that I met on Tiny Chat or through Instagram, and then people would walk up. I think people walked up to me because we have the podcast, so and they've even if they've seen the thumbnail of it or they've clicked on it and watched 5 minutes of it, they've seen my face or they've seen my face on Tiny Chat here and there or something like this. So and I have this. So I was very easily recognizable for anybody.
And you're like 7 feet tall, so you stand out in the crowd.
Oh yeah, I was taller than the majority of people there.
Yeah, except Oliver.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, probably.
So my favorite people was like either seeing people and then going up to them and be like, "Oh hey, it's me, Spencer at sus.deck," and or people doing the opposite way to me, and like that was just insane. Especially like just now, I can place a face and a voice and a person to these online avatars and profile pictures and posts that we're seeing, right? Like, it humanized cardistry for me, which is...
It's more than a simulation.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out Kevin Ho. But, yeah, go ahead, Stan.
No, I was just like to say, I mean, like, still, like, if you see these people like on Tiny Chat or something, it's I think it's still like a little different, at least if you when you meet them in person and like get to like really get to know them.
Yeah, it's a whole different... I mean, as somebody who studied video, I view video as the most intimate way to connect with somebody apart from real life. And it is because, I felt so much more comfortable with people that I've been on Tiny Chat or Skype or Discord with. But to be honest, just with the way cardistry is and the people who I've been messaging for, 1, 2, 3, or 6 months, and then I met them, it already felt genuine and it felt comfortable and nothing was awkward and everybody was awesome and cool and everybody was down to hang out and, I don't know. It's hard to explain just because it was like such a great experience.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
Let's move on to. Just want to give an update on Cardistry Con, how it was. If you have any more questions,
nice to hear it.
Except for trying to buy my Fontaine glitches or something like that, hit me up. But I'm not selling any. Sorry.
Yeah. And we're all getting excited for Brussels next year because, as far as we can tell, we're all going.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun, and hopefully we can do some sort of live podcasty type thing there.
That would be really
very
cool.
cool. Yeah.
Like setting up
organizers,
a booth.
if you're watching,
hit us up.
Panel discussion.
Contact us.
Hit us up. Yeah.
I'll also point out that I'm not going to release it quite yet. But at Cardistry Con, I did get... Well, I got one guest that I think is going to... I think it's going to be a big... Maybe bigger than like the telling people that we had Kevin Ho as a guest, which we'll address that video later. We did shoot it, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But I secured another really big guest, so keep your eye out because I think you're going to be very interested in that.
Just one eye, though.
Yeah, just one eye. Yeah. The other eye, keep your eye on the road. Don't drink and drive, kids. But let's get to our underrated spotlight, which we are featuring Greg Mallon. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to say his Instagram name. You know where it's going to be at. It's going to be in the middle under the videos that we're about to play. So do give him a follow. At least go look at his videos. Throw a comment down. A positive comment. I'll make that clear. Let me get my screen share going.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, I can say a thing or two about Greg because I've been hanging out with him on like Tiny recently. We've been chatting on Instagram and stuff, and just like he is so incredible, like at the way he makes moves, and like he's one of those artists who will spend like a year on a move or more, and uh, like his move design is just insane. I mean, you know, it's top tier.
All right. I have his Instagram up. You just let me know what you want me to play.
Well, play his most recent one because
Okay.
that one, I think the move is named Vitriol, and it's just, it's it's an intense move.
Vitriol.
Yeah, yeah. Like the structures and yeah, that part is so amazing.
Ooh, I love those. I love those grips.
Yeah. And I mean, you can instantly get like a sense of his style. It's like super complex, but also just like very funky.
Yeah,
And he
definitely.
played the one with the brown winds. Um, this one's Petroleum, which is also, I mean, this is just a great move.
Oh,
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
let's see it again. Like,
I like
Just,
that
it's one of
closer
those
motion.
moves where you, yeah, it's one of those moves where you see it and you just go like, yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Yeah. And then just, you can just pick one at random because, I mean, they're all good.
Let's look at this one.
Spencer, you might want to move your cursor.
Oh, sorry. I started watching the cut
He's
intensely.
he's too busy distracted by Greg's awesome cardistry. Yeah,
This is
his
a
grips are just.
very interesting cut.
Uh,
Like, it doesn't make sense, but it does at the same time. I don't know how to explain it.
yeah.
Because it's like I'm following it, and I'm like, wait, why would you go there? But then it just keeps going, and you're like, yep, that makes sense. That feels
Yeah.
good to me.
Yeah, I've been hounding Greg to post more. So, Greg, I know you're listening. This is your official challenge to post more. And if you don't, then all of our tens of listeners are going to know.
Yeah, this was 188 weeks ago. Let's go, Greg.
Yeah.
I want to see
come on.
more dope stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Let's
give
go.
him a follow. Here's his Instagram. Do it.
Yeah,
Do
and
it.
he's also on Tiny a lot. He'll just be, I think, G. So if you get a chance, chat with him. He's real cool.
okay, yeah.
Oh, that's G.
I think
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, back to business.
Back to business.
Taking care of business.
All right, move ownership. Let's start with opinions. We're gonna go around. Give your opinion. Can you own a cardistry move?
And maybe Christopher should start because like earlier when we discussed that, he brought up like the main thing where we started to
Yeah,
where
sure.
we started
Yeah.
the discussion. So
Yeah. I'm going to give a really satisfying or unsatisfying non-answer and say yes and no. Because I think my kind of thesis for this whole podcast episode, if you will, is sort of like you can own a move, but I don't think it should matter as much as we make it matter. It's an interesting topic because, and the reason I suggested this one because I really have been thinking about it a lot lately. And mostly because I've been, I'm relatively new to Instagram. I think I started mine up on, like, I think it was late March because April 1st was the day that I posted my CCC entry. But anyway, I've only had it for like a few months, so I've been only, recently starting to like get a sense of how people interact on Instagram and sort of just, the things that cardists tend to do there. And one of the things is that like if someone does a move and it's like kind of heavily inspired by someone else's move, or if it's the same move, they'll just add the original creator in the comments. Like they won't make any other comment, they'll just be like whatever. And and I started seeing that a lot more, and then that got me thinking, like, with so many people saying like, oh, this is so and so's move. I was thinking like, well, see, this is really interesting because it seems to me that there's a huge emphasis placed on move ownership in 2019 cardistry, and maybe it has been for a while. I think so. I have a feeling that it's kind of over the last few years it's gotten more important, and it's interesting because it's something that I never really thought about when like making moves or when just doing cardistry. And so I thought it would be an interesting topic for us to talk about because it's like, this idea of owning a series of movements with an object is very, very interesting to me. So, I kind of want to, my stance is that, it shouldn't matter as much as we make it matter, but I think there is a sense of ownership we can have. And we can get into, the deep stuff throughout the rest of the episode, but that's sort of my, foundational statement for what I want to explore today.
Nice. Stan?
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess Christopher pretty much said everything. But to add something there, like, and to go into later, it's also like kind of interesting, when you look at move ownership, a topic that's also like closely related to it is how we see it, like what's the difference between, or where do we put the difference between a move and a variation? Because like when you look at it, when it's a genuine new move, then you can name it, right? But if you consider it being an variation, then it's kind of it's still the same mechanic. Like you put your own little twist on it, but it's basically the same move, and therefore you can't really. I mean, you can't name it. It's then just a variation of the move,
Yeah. That's a hard topic because I've asked a lot of people. Maybe it was a month or two ago. I spent a lot of time asking people, like, and I have a move that I purposely use because it's like a variation, kind of. Since this is a YouTube only, I'll do the move. Oh,
Sus cut, yeah.
Oops.
Yeah,
Oops.
the sus cut.
I messed it up, of course, when I say I'm going to do it. So this is a move that is that first part with the spin, that's one-handed pomelo. The second grip is my grip, and then that part where it slides under and flips over is from Samuel Pratt. If you look at his one hand, one cut a day month challenge thing, that's one that was one of my favorites. And then he taught us how to do it on Tiny Chat one day.
Shout out Sprat.
Yeah, but I mean, I posted it a couple times. I posted an actual good take recently on my story, but I tagged Nikolai and Sam, and I put in inspired by. But it's like, what words do you use? Is it a variation? I mean, Samuel's cut. Well, one, there's not a name for it. It is different, but the main moment in mechanic is the same. But let me move back real quick to do I think if you can own a cardistry move? And I would say you can't own it. But I think, like Christopher said, I think it's good to have a sense of pride and a sense of ownership over things that you do create. It's something to be proud of when you put so much time and effort into something, and then you can share it with people, and then if people like it and want to learn it, like, that's something to celebrate. But I wouldn't say that you can own the move. And this might purely be because cardistry is just too young to have this sort of system of ownership and like almost, how do I say this, like a move list for a video or something like this, but having that for everything that you've ever created and then like putting your name at the top and posting it somewhere and then keep adding to it. Like if we had a bunch of Google Docs of every cardist ever and then all the moves they create, and then you have to refer to the document and make sure you credit each person, like if you're writing a academic scientific paper or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever, I mean, it could, but I don't think that's ever going to happen, and I hope it doesn't, because that'd be ridiculous.
Oof.
But
Yeah.
It might happen, but
yeah.
I don't know if I'm at liberty to
Oh
to
God.
say.
I mean,
If you know,
imagine
you
it.
know.
Yeah, I mean, imagine it being like in Magic, where you credit like everyone who once picked up this idea or came up simultaneously. I mean, like if you would start, I don't know, if you start giving like PTL, you would be like, oh yeah, credits to Darren for doing Mockingbird, and then like I don't know the molecule spin. When you start to like credit every single detail, oh my God, that would be like,
Yeah. And then finally Aslan for Korea. But yeah,
Yeah.
Shout out Aslan, by the way.
yeah, I did get the chance to meet Aslan at the con. He's
Oh, that's cool.
he's a good kid.
Yeah.
very talented man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very talented, and he kept bragging that he had pizza when I was hungry, and it made me sad. But
That's what the P in PTL stands
right.
for. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Like we just talked about move ownership. Can you own it? Is it your property? Crediting. Stan brought up in Magic. There's this sense of, you credit everybody, kind of like the lineage of what you created, right? How can we compare this to other arts? Like, if you take the same photograph standing in the same spot as another photographer, you're not gonna get sued or anything. You can't, right? You're taking it as you as a person with the camera of the same location. It's at a different time. The metadata of the photo is different. Even if you use the same exact camera, the information is different on the photo. It can never be replicated exactly. Like same with painting. You can never replicate a painting exactly. Or you can take inspiration from something and do a portrait of the same exact person, but that's not the same portrait. And I don't even really see credits in these art forms. As far as I'm aware, most artists don't credit other artists.
But I feel like it's like, I mean, they don't actively do that, but I feel like it's still like there's some crediting in people's head, like when you take I don't know, when you replicate a picture, or you just try to replicate it with the same person, and you want to, I don't know, draw this person in a portrait or something. It's still like if you try to draw it that way, people still gonna think, okay, that's I saw this idea, like this exact idea done by, I don't know, Picasso or something.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though it's not like they don't speak it out, or they don't really say that, that this is mine, it's still like when people notice, for example, in Cardistry, like most of us know the big moves, the big moves, like the popular moves. And although like the creators don't really say it themselves when other people like do something that's really, really similar to it, in terms of they don't really add much of their own to it, that it's not them who point that out, it's the people who say like, oh, I saw this mechanic done by, I don't know, Leo, for example.
Yeah.
And it's still something that goes that's in people's minds when they look at moves or art.
And I think that adds a part of it's something to discuss, because even that can create negativity, right? Like negative comments or things like this, where people will automatically start using things like, you stole this, you're copying this person, you're copying this move or that thing, which I would say is because we're doing an art form, a visual art form, I would say it's a stretch and a little ridiculous to say things are, unless you take the exact move and can do it in the exact same way and then you post it literally as your creation, I which I don't really see people doing right now. I think it's a bit of a stretch for people to claim these things, especially because you can't copyright or patent a move as far as I'm concerned. So
Not yet.
I mean,
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
which is what kind of something we're going to talk about. But
Yeah.
what do you think, Christopher? Comparing to
You know,
other art
something
forms.
else. Well, I don't think that something. I was just thinking about this now, and I don't think that you can compare it to every other art form because, like, the thing about cardistry is that it's like a move is something that you can replicate almost exactly. I mean, at least you can achieve the same end result. Like, for instance, if your goal is to recreate Starry Night by Van Gogh, you're not going to be able to do it 100% the same. It's not going to look the exact same as what he did. And even if you try to take a photograph, of something like, you go out to where Ansel Adams was taking photographs and you
Yeah.
try to replicate that, it's going to look different just because of, the passage of time and, different elements in the picture. But cardistry is more like music, where you can play a song in its entirety, and even if it's not like the exact same notes or whatever, I mean, you can replicate it to the point where we would go, oh, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
So since it's able to be replicated, we have to take that into effect because it is something that you can copy, for all intents and purposes 100%. Because you can learn a move like PowerPoint or something and learn how to do it, and you can even get it down to where it might look like that person is doing it, like the original creator. And so I think it's sort of like I think maybe it's helpful to think about it in like a musical context or compare it to music, because like I mean, a lot of people will tell you that a lot of pop songs are like the same four chords, and it is, and that
Yeah.
is sort of something that works. So maybe for us as cardists, maybe that is something like starting in, Sybil grip
Yeah.
or Z grip or whatever, or starting from like even some less, maybe just starting from like a swing composition, So those are like our stalwarts, but at the same time what we do from there is sort of what matters. And I think unless you're trying, it's going to be really hard for two songs to sound the same. And like, I don't know, for me it's really interesting to think about, like, when you listen to a certain artist, you can hear their influences, but you also don't go, oh, this sounds exactly like that, to the point where it's one of those songs, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I feel like that's maybe something we should aspire to achieve in cardistry. But I mean, as far as music goes, I mean, you can, I believe you can patent songs as intellectual property. Yeah, and I think after that's interesting. I just thought of this after a certain time. I know like books and which is another thing that you can replicate, and songs go into the public domain. So like I think
Yeah.
it's after like after the author dies or sometime
So-
after their death.
Yeah. A couple
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, and then it becomes public domain, which is why no one's going to get copy striked for using Bach in their videos.
Sure.
So I mean, that's something interesting to think about. Is cardistry going to get to the point where we should do that, or like how important is crediting people? Because it's because when you make an album, you're not going to credit everyone. You know what I mean? I doubt that Kendrick Lamar is out there crediting like Duke Ellington and all these people.
Yeah.
Even though he owes a lot to them and couldn't have done what he did without them.
But it would
But I don't know. Go on.
but it would at the same time, like, I'm sure a lot of people would agree, it would be absolutely ridiculous to credit every single musical inspiration for a piece of music, just like it is for like a magic trick or routine or a magic routine or a cardistry move, because you would basically have to, I mean, especially in cardistry, I feel like when I think about it, the list would be extremely long for every single cut made.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's so few original things that we do in cardistry. As far as the actual grips and mechanics we use, of course, when we mix them, flip it, and whatever, it becomes something original and beautiful. But at the core of it, there's just a lot of basic grips and mechanics and ideas used that were already there before. So it'd just be ridiculous to say, okay, here's my credit page. It's I cited my sources. Right. It's 6 pages long for my one cut.
Well, artists are kind of already doing what musicians are doing, because you look in the liner notes of an album and you see the artist usually credits their inspirations, or at least references who like helped out with the album. And in Cardistry we kind of have that too, because at the end of most Cardistry videos you'll get that kind of list of people who like inspired by these people. And I mean, I think that's a good kind of healthy way of doing it. I think it just becomes a problem once we think about ownership on such a micro level, to the point where we are like, we're so obsessed with like kind of categorizing and naming and owning everything, to the point where it makes it impossible for anyone to have anything that they can call theirs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's so funny that I'm in Germany. We have this WhatsApp with a lot of cardists, like ranging from beginner to like more experienced ones. And the funny thing that I observed there is, like, they don't even have to say I came up with something. They might just practice a move and post it in this group, and like just put under it in captions thoughts like question mark. And people, the first thing I see people comment is, that was been done before.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I mean, no one, they don't even say it's their move. They're just like thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how deep how to say it, like it's really deeply connected with how people see things. It's that the first thing that, I mean, even if no one's really saying that it's his move or that he created it, people still, that's the first thing that people comment. It's this cut has been done before by that person, and it's called whatever.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
That's interesting.
It's so funny. It's so funny to see that,
Mm-hmm.
And also following that, the thing that, I mean, we already talked about that beforehand, but how it's with move ownership, you don't like to a certain degree it matters who posted it first, like, or who published it first, but there are also moves where people think that a certain, like, I don't know, for example, the anaconda, that's the most beautiful example that I mean, like, people see Darren and Matt do anaconda, and I've heard from so many people they thought that both like either Darren or Matt created anaconda, although it's not even their move, but the thing that they're like popularized it, this move makes also, I mean, it's also the range, like if you, it's one thing that you put it out first, and the other thing is like how wide or like to which degree it reaches people, because only then it becomes like people start to recognize it as someone's,
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and that reminds me of an interesting phenomenon, which is, because I was kind of talking about this before when we were prepping for the episode, and I was like, who, if anyone owns a move, who is it? Is it the person who creates it first? Is it the person who posts it first? Is it the person who gets the most popular for doing it? Because I've seen this happen so much where someone will be like, and I've gotten comments on my post like this where I'll post something and then people will be like, oh man, I had the same move, dang it,
Yeah.
So it's almost like whoever posted first is who created it. So you could be the first person to create something and not get credit for it because you didn't post it first. And I feel like that is a little, maybe not flawed, but it's interesting to think about, what does that mean for the way we credit things, for the system we have in place? Is it rightful that the person who posted first and shares it with the community first gets credit for it? Does it matter who creates it first? And I don't think there are maybe like I can't answer those questions, but I just think they're interesting to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't really thought about that. Well, one, because I don't post moves on my main account. I have a private one for that. But yeah, that's super interesting because actually I was on Tiny Chat like 2 nights ago with a couple people and Jason was on there, Cardistry, and he did this. He got into this position where I was like, I came up with something exactly the same like 2 months ago, and I was like, ah, crap. Like, I felt like, okay, well, I'm just gonna let that one go. I'm not even gonna work on it anymore. One, because it's like, well, Jason's gonna do it better than me, so I'm not gonna try.
Well, okay, no, see, I had someone else talk about that. Who was it? I actually think it might have been Aslan. I don't want to out him, but he was saying something similar to me about he was like, oh, this other guy's gonna do it better than me. And see, this is the problem I have with this emphasis on ownership, is that it stunts our creation process, because now you
Yeah.
have a mechanic that like, even if you had the same opener as Jason, I mean, you two would go in different directions with it, just because no one has the same style. Like, you give 10 people the same opener and they're going to create 10 different moves.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, but you're like, for various reasons, for the originality reason, and also for the perceived impact of different skill level reason,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I don't want to do that move anymore. So it's like, I mean, like, the musical equivalent of that would be hearing like a chord progression, like a standard, chord progression that you hear in
Yep.
every pop song, and then being like, oh, someone's done that, I don't want to do that, But like, it's like, even if those songs are the same chords, like, not all of them sound the same, right? Because you put different embellishments, different lyrics, different instrumentations over it,
Yeah.
and the skeleton can be the same, but it's very different. And that can even go for like books and movies that have essentially the same plot, but they're carried out very differently.
Like the hero's journey isn't everything ever, right? But it's just
Right,
so
right.
different. I mean, it's used in millions of media, cross-platform media, and it's like
Yeah.
nobody really calls that out because that's just the skeleton, but everything surrounding it is somebody's imagination and thoughts.
Yeah, and no one's out there saying like, "Oh man, can you believe the Matrix ripped off the Bible?" You know what I mean? Like,
Or Star
but
Wars ripped off World War II.
yeah. But at the same time, that's actually part of what enriches it, because like, if you look at the analysis of like the comparisons between like the Matrix and the biblical texts, or World War II and Star Wars, it enriches the way that you look at that
Yeah,
piece of media.
yeah.
So it almost does the opposite effect, where you're not like, oh, it ripped it off, but it makes you look at that thing that you already know in a different way. And so why can't we apply that for takes on moves? You know what I mean? And for the record, I'm not saying that you should be unoriginal. Like, I'm just saying that, if you come to an opener like a grip or something like that, and you don't want to do it just for the reason that someone else has done it, like, the directions you're going to go in are going to be different. It's not like you're going to come up with the same exact move, unless it's maybe like a one-handed move with a really
Yeah.
kind of common opener. I mean, I can see that happening, but otherwise it's like, why not explore the mechanic? Why not find what your unique contribution to that trope or that, common element can be?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing why when I saw Jason do that, and I was like, okay, I posted something exactly like this. I think I deleted it though, but I guess for me it was kind of, you mentioned it really quickly when you were talking, but it's like, all right, the popularity and skill level difference is what determines who gets to own a move sometimes, or a mechanic, because somebody can do something on, like me, like I got into the same position that he was in on accident, and then I just started to keep playing with it and try and find somewhere to go with it, and then I let it go for a month, and then I see Jason do it, and I'm like, okay, well, even if I was posting publicly or put it in like a video or something like that, but Jason posted it first before that came out, it's gonna be his, even if I came up with it, 2-3 months before, because like nobody cares what I post when it comes to cardistry. But everybody, I mean, a lot of people know Jason and a lot of people respect Jason because and they should. He's great. He's a great cardist and he's a great move designer. But yeah, that's kind of like part of that move ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it brings us back to like this thing with the range. How many people can you reach with your cardistry?
Yeah.
I mean, like someone who's starting out, and also what Christopher said with the originality. I feel like this is the main reason why move ownership is so like so strong in the community, is that most cardists tend to appreciate things they haven't seen before, like more, and it kind of like loses the value. Like if you see someone else do it, you'd be like, oh damn it, people already saw that. That's gonna be, that's nothing I can like wow them with,
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, let's extrapolate that analogy or that idea that, whoever posts it and whoever has, a bigger follower count kind of gets the move. Eventually, if we continue down that line, we're looking at a community where it's so entirely divided that there will only be like established cardists who post and then everyone else who just doesn't really post unless it's clearly like their moves or just like doing combos or something. Like no one else is going to be creating, because if you have to have a certain level of clout, frankly, to kind of get the rights to a move, and it like even if someone lesser made it, then that's going to mean that it's going to grow the divide between popular and unpopular cardists that we're already seeing. Like it's so hard to get established. Anyone who's tried to get established, especially on Instagram, it's tough. If you don't get kind of discovered, if you don't get like an anyone vid or a Fontaine vid, it's really, really hard. And so you have to have some kind of way, and you have to know the right people. So it becomes this thing where it's almost like trying to get into the pop music career, or getting onto the radio or something. Like it's about knowing the right people at that point, right? It's not about how skilled you are. It's not about how much hard work you put in. And so I think that's a very scary thing. We're still at the point where the community is pretty small. A lot of us know each other. And I think now is sort of the time when we are able to make the most changes. And that's why I'm really excited to be doing this podcast. And I think that's why at this stage it's kind of crucial for us to think about things like this, because, if we go down this route that Spencer talked about, it's going to end up with this humongous divide where no one is creating. And I think, creating is, I mean, frankly, I think doing cardistry is like half the fun for me, but the other half is creating. And I think, I think there's a natural instinct in cardistry to create. You visit the cardistry subreddit, and it's full of beginners going like, does this exist, or does it have a name? And so they want something to call their own. They want to contribute, and that's just a natural, I think, inclination of anyone who does any art. But if we get to this point where we're afraid of creating because we don't want to be accused of ripping off someone, or because someone else who's more popular is going to do it first, I mean, that's really dystopian in my point of view. So I mean, I get why you think that, and I think it's natural to think that, especially given kind of the way the community is structured right now. But if it continues down that path, then I don't think that's a terribly optimistic path.
Yeah, definitely. No, but I think that's how it is right now, to a point, especially if you look at not necessarily how many followers somebody has, but the people who follow them, like the specific people who follow them. Like I'm within 500 followers of Jason, and I know I can catch that if I keep taking photos consistently and keep steady growth. But it doesn't matter, because if I started posting cardistry, the people who matter, who need to see it, are following Jason, not me. You know what I mean? So it doesn't even matter if it hit, if every single one of my followers saw a cut that I made, But if somebody else who has, like Christopher, like you have some people who like are really good cardists who follow you. So if you post the same cut that I do, but as yourself and say that it's yours, that's your cut, because people are gonna see, it, and the people who have bigger voices know that they saw it on yours, not mine. So it's kind of
it'll
like
be lazy, but you know.
okay.
But I think this is. I mean, it's telling that we are, you know, maybe half an hour into a conversation about move ownership, and sort of the conclusion we've come to is that you have to know the right people. I mean,
Yeah, but just to make this clear, like from my point, this is only like something like this is only a barrier when there's a conflicting situation of two people claiming the same move.
That's true.
You know,
right.
I mean, like you still like you don't really need the range to get like recognized for your stuff. Like best example would be Lucas. You know, like when he started out, he was just like, I mean, his style is like he the how to say it, like it's not exact. I mean, like it's basically like, or at least the way he creates stuff is like this raw experimental style that you also see like Gaulock do, that also you see that you also see Aviv do, you know. And this is something like, I mean, he might wasn't like popular when he started out with like coming like showing his moves, but it's still like, you know, it's kind of hard to express it the way I want it to be. But I mean, I just want to make it clear that it's not like it's not like you can't put out moves, you know, and call them your own when you don't have like many people following you. It's just like in a conflicting situation, that's when this problem occurs.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, but in Spencer's situation, it's just I believe, I don't want to misquote you, but I think you said it was just like an opener or like a phase of a move, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like the moment of a move. It was something like this. I don't remember how I got into it because I haven't done it in a while, but I can show you kind of the structure.
Jason's gonna copy strike us now.
Damn it.
So this, oh my goodness. So it's a really weird structure with like the thumb to thumb thing that I have in like 99% of my cuts. And I had all these cards down here. Sorry, I can't do it right now. But yeah, it was literally kind of like the main structure, the moment of the structure being created. And then where he was experimenting is where I stopped at it and was experimenting also, was holding all of this cards in this cool structure where there's a packet in between the thumbs and then two packets being held down at the bottom, and then kind of what to do from there.
Yeah.
So
but it doesn't even have to be a whole move. It can just be a part of a move, you know. And I think that when it gets to that point and you're scared to explore it, you know, I think that's something kind of, you know, it's worrisome, I think. But Stan, would you mind sharing what you said about what Patrick said? Because I think that's really relevant here.
That's what I wanted to say next, is that I remember Patrick Varnavas talking about this on Matthew Baudon's stream, on his podcast stream, where he also had like this interview type of situation, and he also said that Kevin Ho also talked about is how to steal like an artist, or like how you know how to. You say steal, but it's not really stealing. It's like just taking it and making it your own. And in this particular thing, he's like, you have when you have a moment and the structure of a cut, you can like, for example, you take Spin Doctor, right? You can take either the moment or the structure, you know, and take it, and like if you take the moment from it, you come up with your own structure, and the other way around. But you can't take both the moment and the structure, you know. And that's what I found really interesting, and I think that's where also move ownership comes in, you know, because we have like for example, also to take Spin Doctor again, you have Spin Doctor and you have, for example, Jasper's cat. And which he also points out is they basically have the same moment. It's just like five sort of packets like appear in this kind of display, and they both kind of have the same moment, but they have like different structures,
Sure.
and different ways how to get in this moment.
Right.
And you don't see anyone like commenting, under Jasper's doing Jasper's cat that it's like stolen from Spin Doctor or something,
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah. I think that's a good guideline to follow, at least, if you're worried about something. I think that's, if you're in that situation where you're afraid of taking from someone else, I think that's a good kind of just basic rule of thumb to follow. I don't know if it applies in all situations, but I think that just kind of stuck with me when you told me that earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
You brought up Lucas earlier, and something that I've thought about before is his move Chidori Spear recently got Move of the Year, but should it have technically been Variation of the Year? Because you think about it, and it's it's a curly Q with an arm spread addition, right? And the thing is, what's interesting is that he sort of is breaking the rule of having both the moment and the structure of the curly Q, and then just tacking on something to that. Now, I'm not saying that move is unoriginal per se, but I think it's an interesting case in move ownership where you do a move like that, it gets Move of the Year, but it's really an addition to an existing move. Now, the question is, has he made it his own enough for it to be its own thing? Like, I would say
Sure.
yes, but I think there needs to be some defense as to why, especially when it's an add-on.
So does yeah, that's a hard one, because that's like kind of like the one-handed cut I was showing, where it's like 25% Nikolai's, 25% mine, and half Sprat's, right?
Right.
It's more of like, it's a combo of one-handed cuts put together in a sequence that's never been done before and split at different parts where it's never been split.
Mm-hmm.
But is that original enough to be its own move? Because I would say when you do this cut on its own, just like as it's being done, nobody's done that, right? Like that, people have done parts of it, but people have done parts of every cut. Like every cut has parts of it done already. So it's kind of like, where are we drawing lines in the sand of what is what? Move, original move, variation, somebody else's move.
Combos.
Yeah, combos.
Also,
So are we going to have to start saying this is like a combination move? Because that would be every move ever. But what? So it's
I think
interesting.
it depends on how. I think it depends on how unique the mechanic is too, which makes sense because, like, no one's calling out 4-packet transfix for being 1/3 Sybil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or 5 faces of Sybil for the pedants in the crowd.
Yeah.
I think it's just an interesting case because, like I think, at least this is just kind of my, really on the spot definition of this, but I think for a move to be its own move, if it's like, or I guess where the barrier between variation and new move happens is when it's, I think, I mean, if it's unrecognizable from the original move, I think at that point you have yourself a new move. Like, definitely you're in the safe zone for that. But I think if you can modify something to the point where it gives a different effect to the viewer, then it's your own move. So, for example, Chidori Spear, it's that curly Q, but that's not the moment of the move per se. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because he has the arm addition to it, and like that's the moment. That's sort of the wow factor of it. And so I think it's different enough. It has a different effect than you would just do a curly Q. So I think that we can call that his own move. But on the other hand, if you were to take like a curly Q and then like spin a card on top, like that wouldn't be an original move. It would just be a variation because you're not changing anything to the point where it gives a different effect on the viewer.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I mean, uh, yeah. Sorry, Spencer, go on.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. Go ahead.
Ah, okay. No, and yeah, I thought about it, like how to give a reason why it's his move, and I feel like you could basically do that with this explanation I talked about from Patrick on how to like take moves, because I mean, sure, if you look at it, it's I mean, it's a curlicue and it's sort of a spread,
Hmm.
but like the way he gets into it, so he took both moments and kind of shifted it into the transition between both, and also
Mm,
like found a way, like how to get like this. He found also this transition,
right. So you're
and
kind of arguing that the transition is the moment. That's really interesting.
yeah, because I feel that's like the really what really gets people, like,
Yeah.
start to say that it's like really cool. It's this thing where he goes like bomb, and it's like all lines up in one line and then goes back.
See, that's interesting because I didn't think about the transition being the moment because I mean, you think about that, that makes sense because if you do a curly cue, people are like, oh, that's a curly cue. You do that same arm spread just that, you're like, oh, that's okay. But when one comes from the other, it's that connection that you didn't think of before, and so that's the wow moment. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's why
Mm,
I think how you can say that he made it his move. It's like he found this transition, and in the end, this transition is the moment. And therefore
yeah,
it's something that stands on its own, and therefore he's like he could own it. You know?
right.
But
That reminds me of Luis's move in his final where he does the double fans and he like, it's sort of like a magic moment when he pulls one from out from the other. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and doing, I mean, making two fans is not anything new. Like if he just did that, but it is how he gets into it, and it's sort of that moment of surprise. So for him, the the almost magical moment of the move is sort of what makes it his, and the way he gets into it.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to think about. Yeah,
I also wanted
because
to
I guess otherwise it would be unoriginal.
yeah. I also wanted to take a quick moment to congratulate Lucas on winning Breakout Cardist of the Year and Move of the Year.
Hmm.
That's pretty nuts, man, to win in two
Yeah,
categories
man.
back to
Congrats.
back. So
Yeah.
congratulations. It was wild. You had a ton of support at Cardistry Con. Everybody was
Hmm.
extremely happy to see you win. I was extremely happy to see you win. We were just all kind of collectively sad as a CC group that you weren't there to celebrate with everybody. But um, again, congratulations.
Yeah, man. Yes.
Let's see. I think this is we kind of covered it a little bit, but I think this is an interesting question. Is when you make a move, do you create it or do you discover it?
Mm.
That's interesting, man. That's what I was thinking
Because
about too.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
oh, I was just
No,
gonna
no, go
say it
on.
kind of goes like, uh, well, like I said, we glossed over it without pointing it out, but it's kind of like if you look at the moves as a combination of many mechanics and movements, then it seems like logical to call it a discovery because you
Hmm.
didn't create every single movement, mechanic, and idea in a move. Um, so yeah, Stan, what's up?
Yeah, I was just to point out that, I mean, if you look at it, I know that you say that. I mean, there is like probably infinite ways of shuffling cards, but the thing is, it's still already there. Like, I mean, although you have like infinite possibilities, these possibilities are there. You just have to, like, it's really interesting to see it that way, because I like this idea of discovering it, not really because simply it's floating around. You just have
Yeah, you
to, like,
have to
you
grab
just
it.
have to, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you have to find that, that exact grips and the transitions between, and the certain beats to the move.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like the ingredients are out there, and it's just like, it's just like you who makes the recipe in a way
Sure, yeah,
for the
Yeah.
move.
that's a good way to put it.
I think that's true for any art. I'm reminded of the quote that is often attributed to Michelangelo about making sculptures, and there's it's not that he's making the sculpture, but he's just carving out the parts that aren't the sculpture. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
interestingly, that kind of goes back to our episode 0, where I think it was Frank Sung who defined cardistry as moving sculptures. So maybe that gives that a little more depth as to the connection therein. I think it's interesting because there's like equal parts sort of creativity and discovery, because like the specific grips that you use and the connections that you make are going to be they can be unique to you. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like because there are infinite possibilities with a deck of cards, right? But it's a combination of just like discovering what's possible and then creating something based on your discoveries.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I think it's a very fair way to put it. Is it kind of, because we use all these grips and whatnot, or we think we create new ones, but you see somebody else do it, and it's probably been done before. But the way that you use it, and the order where you put it in the cut, and the pace and speed at which you do it, and all of these things will be original to you. I mean, granted, that's to say every cut that you do is going to be original to you in some way, because we can't be robots and do it exactly the same way. But yeah, I think it's interesting. So we have about 10 minutes left. So let's talk about some resolutions, some possible solutions, or just like, right here we have written down possibly pulling back on ownership, not making it such a big deal, which we did bring up a little bit, and finding a better way to credit people instead of, which we also talked about a little bit, instead of, let's credit every single person in the world who has touched a deck of cards, because that's basically what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
So thoughts.
I would say, like, as far as it goes with the pulling back on ownership, I don't feel probably the only thing that should change is that people like always you could kind of say that you should pull back, but in a way that it's not the first thing that people should notice about the cut,
Yeah.
and it's also that people, like for me, for example, if you use a mechanic but go like, it's the same mechanic but you go different directions with it, like for example an opener, then for me it's not something I value less than something that someone, like, that a particular person discovered, and it's like his own, and it's only like you only see this opener and this specific cut from this specific person,
Yeah.
If I see someone do the same opener but go a different direction, I can still appreciate that,
Yeah,
and I feel,
definitely.
yeah, so
Christopher. Oh, sorry, Stan.
no, I was just like to end, find a better way to credit. I think it's like something that's at least from my point, at least from where I am with thinking about it, I feel it's close to impossible to find like a way where it doesn't get too how to say, where you go to a point that you start like Spencer already said, start crediting every person that held cards in his hands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of want to, like, to find this balance between crediting people and not feeling people unappreciated, because somehow their idea, but you kind of didn't credit them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really it isn't something that we should like aim for. I feel like the first part with pulling back on the ownership, I feel like that's something we should go with, at least from my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say that I do hope that people will start like not caring as much about ownership. I know that's hard depending on where you rank, what like your rank is, what your status is in cardistry. Because I can see people with less clout or less status feeling more defensive over what they make, because this might be something that can get them notoriety or noticed in the community, right? Like if they create something really awesome, really cool, unique, and cool, that this might be something that they're like, I need to coddle this and protect it, because this could be my ticket in, or part of my ticket in. This is where I started really growing and creating. But also, I think it just becomes, it like we talked about, we don't see anybody, we don't see the big name people that a lot of us look up to for inspiration to grow our own creativity in cardistry posting moves once a week, let alone once a day, once a week, or once a month. Like it's once every couple months they post something, and usually it's something like old or from like a solo video or something like this. So we get, one solo video from half of the big name cardist a year, maybe, if we're lucky, or we get 15 great videos, but we have to wait till CardistryCon and CCC. So I think it's kind of killing creativity a little bit in the community as a whole, because we all need each other. We all need to see what each other is doing to keep this innovation and creation bouncing off of each other and growing and building, right? And that goes for any art form. If every single painter ever hid all their secrets until their final painting and then released it with no explanation, no reason, no like description of how it was created, the medium it was created on and with, like, painting would not be anywhere near where it is today. It would be nowhere near, because we'd all be left to our own devices on how to do it and how to get certain techniques and textures and all of these, and even how to get certain types of paint and how to use certain types of paint. Like, it's the same thing in cardistry, is how I see it. Is I'm only able to like have fun creating because, I watch Leo's video again, and then I get inspired by some of the things like the flow or something like this. Then I'm like, I would love to create a cut that has this feeling that he created with this such and such cut, or I love this mechanic, I want to try and use that specific mechanic in a cut or something, or something like this. And without that, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do with this deck of cards. And this community has grown this far because of everybody sharing, right? Because of everybody collaborating. And as even though I've only been in it now almost 7 months, I already notice since I started, it's even less like sharing every single month. Like, there's less that I see that I want to see. And this is outside of like CCC and CardistryCon, because obviously that's a big jump in sharing, but everything gets really secretive, 2-3 months before CCC videos drop, and everything gets twice as secretive as that after the top 16 is picked. And then it explodes with a bunch of videos, and it's just I don't know, it's bothersome in a way. I understand, on the other hand, like, I get it. I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same if I was in that position, so I'm not blaming anybody for it. But I also want to, at the second point, I'll address really quickly, because it's very simple for me. I just like the inspirations things that end a video. I think that's great. I think that's very fair. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. Christopher.
Well, I want to hit on three things. First of all, since you mentioned being in Cardistry for 7 months, I just wanted to kind of tell everybody that, you may have heard some things about our uh, respective skill levels. And I've been doing. We mentioned this in the first episode, but Stan, I think, has been doing Cardistry for about 5 years, 5, 6 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for over 7 at this point. So I just wanted to clear that up for people, lest you think that we're all beginners here.
I'm the only beginner.
Yeah. And the two things I wanted to hit on were, one, I don't think that we should have this fear of like, oh, I have the same opener or moment as someone else. Like I can't do anything with it. So like Spencer, I want you to, make more to that move. You know what I mean? Like, and who knows? Because chances are it won't even end up being the same move. Because if your creation process is anything like mine, you'll start with something that you think is good, and then the move will look completely different when it's finished.
Yeah.
I don't think that should be this thing where it's like it's paralyzing you from making new moves and from discovering new moves. I definitely think that like if you kind of come up with something independently, that's just sometimes how it is, and I think that we should definitely place less of an emphasis on ownership. But the second thing I wanted to bring up is that I think maybe a different attitude toward crediting and toward ownership would be healthy, because you realize, there's something I realize is that why are most people so obsessed with ownership? Because they want to make sure that when they do a move, people know it's theirs, right? So it's sort of like this self-preservation thing where like people want to make sure that like people know that this move is mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's why most cardists are so anal, frankly, about crediting. But let's flip that on its head. What if you wanted to do that because you had a respect for the people who came before you? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
as with every art, we stand on the shoulders of giants and people who where they've progressed the art so much that without them it wouldn't be how it is today.
Yeah.
And I think having a respect for that and for what other people are doing is really important. I think the reason that we're crediting is maybe not the best. I'm not saying that it's bad, but I think that we're definitely lacking a kind of sense of just respect for what other people are doing. Or at least just in the sense of, really trying to honor other people who have supported the art and who have innovated and progressed it. So I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the way that we are crediting right now. I think that, I don't know, I think that it shouldn't be as big of a deal, but I feel like we should still be aware of what other people are doing and be aware of who we're taking inspiration from, and I agree about the crediting, the inspiration thing at like the end of a video or something like that, or like inspired by this person. I think that's a good way to do it. But I think if we focus less on the whole, I've got to credit everybody, and more on like the, I guess just a broader outlook maybe on, thinking about respecting who
Like
came
how-
before you and go ahead.
Yeah, or oh no, I was just like that, or how you, I mean, like simply care more about how you can take that what the other person did or also did, and like make it completely different, or like make it in a way that create or like refine it in a way that it doesn't look like that it's your own, basically, that people can say, it's not that that people see it as an as a move on its own.
Right, yeah. And I mean, without certain moves, we wouldn't have other moves that, without Curlicue, we wouldn't have Chidori Spear. We wouldn't have that awesome move to inspire us. And I think, like, I've talked with so many cardists who are like, if people steal my move, I'm just flattered, to have inspired people. And I think that should ultimately be the goal of creation too. And I mean, we'll probably hit on this in another episode because it's much more in depth than we can go here in the last few minutes. But I think that if your goal is to really inspire people and not to have this body of work that is yours and get attention on you, that I think, when I guess my whole stance is just like, if it becomes more communal and there's that respect for just everybody and that wanting to inspire people and being inspired, I think that's a much healthier outlook than like, oh, I've got to make sure that everyone knows this move is mine so that I can, get clout or do a video or, something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and like you were saying, if we respect the people who inspired us and, give them a little shout out or credit, then that in a way is almost like you don't have to credit yourself. Like if the community as a whole just, we all agree like, hey, we should respect the people that we're very inspired by and we look up to and give them credit when it's due and when it's needed, then we don't have to flex our own stuff and, be like, hey, this is mine, that's mine, this is mine, because other people are going to do it for you. And that's the best way to do it, I feel like, because everybody wins at that point.
Yeah, it reminds me of that that move that Kichi posted, where the packet disappears and then comes back, and everyone, including me, did variations of that, and it just became this cool thing where like, everyone knew who it was, but it didn't matter because it was just this cool, kind of silly move, realistically.
Yeah.
But like, people were having fun with it. Kichi was reposting everything to his story. You know what I mean? Like, and he was enjoying that, and I think that's that sort of wholesomeness that we can achieve. And I feel like when we start thinking of crediting and ownership as more of like, I'm releasing something to inspire people, and then if they do something with it, great. You know what I mean? I think that's much more just healthy and beneficial for the art as a whole.
Yeah definitely. All right, I'm gonna cut everybody off there because we have hit our time limit, and I have heard that people wanted
got short attention spans.
people want the time cut down if possible. So instead of trying to cram everything in, we can just have multiple episodes on these things anyways. So that is it. Again, I'm Spencer, Stan, and that's Christopher. Again, our Instagram and names are right below our faces, or their faces, and under my hands. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, we have a very, very special, awesome guest that should be coming on sometime soon. So keep following us for announcements, and I'm sure we'll release it soon once we get a confirmation on date that we'll have this person on. And with that, I'm going to say later.